So,
Yeah, what's going on?
how did we get here?
Oh, how did we get here? Like, where all of a sudden everyone's talking about food, ag, and health and wellness? Well,
When you and I have been doing it a long time.
we've been doing this a long time. You know, it's interesting. We're about a year into even knowing what MAHA is, Make
Right.
America Healthy Again. I'm sure everyone in this room now knows that acronym well. And it kind of did come out of nowhere. Like,
Right.
I think it's definitely born out of the alliance between, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Trump going into the November election. And a lot of folks within Trump's orbit think that it really helped. That really helped
Yeah.
Trump win in November. And so it's part like just calculated political, alliance. But what I think people miss is that what it did was tap into real grassroots energy and a real, I think, political realignment. This is something I've been talking about a lot, both in my newsletter, Food Fix, which you should all read, and also
Please
my
subscribe to
podcast
that,
with the Food and Environment Reporting Network, Forked. Great. You should listen to both of them. We talk about this a lot. Like, there is a real political realignment that's also happened, where now on the right, you are seeing a mainstream movement to push food and ag reform and health and wellness, whatever you want to bucket it as, into like the mainstream political conversation. And so this is no longer a left-coded thing. Like the idea that you would reform food is no longer left-coded. We have broken out of that. So I think they've tapped into a real grassroots energy. There's a real realignment. But what's happening now in Washington is a lot of chaos, a lot of destruction. And whether you think that's good or bad, I think everyone is very confused about who to trust right now. If you have not watched President Trump's press conference on Tylenol or acetaminophen and autism from this week, I actually recommend that you go watch it in its raw form. Not the clips, not the media coverage. Love the media, been a part of it for a long time. Go watch the raw press conference to sort of understand where we're at, the messaging that's being pushed by the administration, and then also how much medical groups are screaming about how they do not believe there's evidence for these these purported links. And, we have even more groups this week calling for Kennedy's resignation now over this. So we're in a chaotic moment, and that's the word I just keep coming back to. Chaotic, disorienting. I think for folks who've been in this for a long time, it's like everyone's at the party now, but it's chaotic.
It is, and it's intentional chaos in so many ways. And so, were you surprised by all this?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I was too. It came, really, I just couldn't imagine it. And people, and I imagine this happens to you, people come up to me and they're like, hey, aren't you excited about MAHA? And I am not.
I totally understand that view. I don't tell people what to think about MAHA or not. That's not, I don't see that as my role. I am pointing out what is happening and what I saw happening very early. I remember it was mid-September 2024 was the first time I wrote about MAHA in my newsletter. And I got a couple nasty emails from folks who were like, why are you platforming Kennedy? Like, the anti-vaccine views are very clear. Like, why are you doing this? And I had to politely write back, like, I totally hear you. Thanks for writing in. But this is a presidential candidate who's saying they're going to let this person go wild, which they now have, by the way, like promises made, promises kept. And I can't ignore that this is happening.
Right, of course.
And so identifying early that was happening, I've actually had a few people come back to me now and be like, oh, well, yeah, that was a real thing. And like, thanks for flagging that this was all coming. But this train was already moving, right? Like I didn't see the train coming.
I didn't see it start.
I didn't see it coming. But, in some ways, I think the folks who are in food maybe shouldn't be surprised because we've seen that there's more, folks who've been working in food. You have more friends from high school who now ask you about food. You have more friends or parents and, aunts and uncles who were not interested at Thanksgiving and now maybe they are. And I think we have seen just a growing interest in like, what are we eating? Is it, why aren't people healthier? Like, I just think that has just entered the zeitgeist in a way that's been slowly building for a long time.
Yeah. I also, I've known some of these MAHA moms, like Zen Honeycutt, for 15 years or so, and Food Babe Bonnie, I've known her for a long time. I did not see them
teaming up
like they have. And I, one of the things that RFK Jr. has spoken a lot about is, pesticides. And I know Zen, and I haven't heard Bonnie say this yet, but Zen is very upset that he's not going after pesticides as hard as he promised. But
At all. He's not going after them at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You
would be nuanced, but yeah.
Is that going to hurt Maha in the long run and hurt him?
Well, I think what's so important with Maha, but this is true for any administration, you have to, and this is like the reporter hat, wearing my reporter hat, you have to look at what administrations do, not just what they say. So there is a big gap right now between the rhetoric of Maha and the actual policy plans of the administration on certain topics. I think pesticides is one that is there's the most glaring gap between the rhetoric that was on the campaign trail, which was we gotta, reduce pesticides. I mean, in some cases, Kennedy has proposed like banning glyphosate or atrazine or these,
right.
the really strong language saying that we're being poisoned. This was not, couched in any way.
Right.
And now we're seeing that, after the big Maha assessment came out in May, there was a ton of lobbying from agriculture groups, and also the food industry, but particularly commodity groups, farm groups, really pushing back on this idea that there needed to be any crackdown on pesticides. So not only did the Maha strategy report not propose a crackdown or say that we needed to really change our regulation of pesticides, but actually called for an initiative to help assure the American public that our current system is robust.
Right.
And I think that's what really upset folks like Zen Honeycutt, who I don't want to put words in her mouth, but kind of felt gaslit to be like, we have been raising all of these concerns, and now here you are in this official document saying what we really need is just to convince everyone that things are good, status quo is fine. They do have a little bit of calls for more research, but I think for folks who are really pushing hard on advocacy and who have really been part of the movement, they see this Maha moment as the moment for action. Not the moment to study things more, because that's how you run out the clock.
Right. Right. I will tell you, and this is a closed door session, so don't anyone quote me either. About a month and a half ago, a bunch of people in DC, including me, had dinner with the CEO of a major agrochemical company. I won't name them, but they produce Roundup.
And so you can Google it. Yeah.
And I will tell you that the CEO, again, please, this is between us.
No one posted on X. Yeah.
Very concerned. And this was a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
And he encouraged, and there were journalists and people like me in the audience, but he was like, we have to tell the real story of atrazine and glyphosate because it's not getting out there so that people are convinced. But he seemed
You're
worried.
like, is that my job? Yeah.
Not my job.
Oh.
So do you think that these big companies are still sort of scared of Maha?
So yes and no. I think yes, because the public conversation is changing so much, the narrative has changed so much. So much of this has been driven by social media, by these Maha influencers and advocates have huge platforms. They don't need to go through the media, and they are changing minds. They're changing narratives. That is all definitely happening. But the regulatory side, we're not seeing EPA take up that momentum and say we're going to shift gears and change our approach. I think what I've seen in the last 6 months is just an astonishing recognition of how powerful the agriculture industry is in Washington, and particularly compared to how, I don't want to say unpowerful, but how much less powerful the food industry is, because there is still a few more things in that strategy that I would say the food industry hates versus the ag. So there's kind of this split happening. There are a few regulatory things that they may think about doing on the packaged food side. One of them is front of pack labeling. So at the tail end of the Biden administration, there was a proposal to put nutrition information on the front of pack.
Yeah.
And that's moving forward. The Trump administration put this on the regulatory agenda for the spring. So that's surprising, but really big, I think, political difference just in terms of the powerful nature of getting your way in Washington.
Yeah.
I've seen the muscle of big ag really outperform the muscle of big food, which has been an interesting thing to see.
Anything else you want this audience to know about Maha before we move on to some other topics?
So I think the thing I've been grappling with, particularly this week after watching that press conference, is just how much this time period is going to feel like people are going to feel very unmoored, because all of the institutions, all of the medical associations, there is no institution that is going to be safe from what's happening right now. Like the mistrust, the tearing down, the saying that these folks can't be trusted or this group can't be trusted, whether it's the American Academy of Pediatrics or Big Food or whatever, CSPI. Like I think every group is going to feel some shredding from what's happening right now. And I don't know where that leads us or how this like middle part's going to go, but I think we should be prepared for a lot more of that. And probably some of this will be stuff that, wherever you sit, you're like, oh, maybe this is fine. And some of it will be like, wow, this is deeply, deeply dangerous. And where are we going? And I think we should all just be prepared for that very, chaotic is the word I keep coming back to. But I just don't see that letting up. I think that's where we're at for the next couple of years.
We all need a lot of anti-anxiety medication.
That is not Maha. That's not in line with Maha.
I know. They don't like it. They don't like it. I do. I want to switch to tariffs. There's so much uncertainty for farmers right now, and China has been boycotting soybeans from the United States. Do you think this is influencing or will in 3.5 years influence how agricultural communities view the Trump-Vance administration and all of this?
No.
Damn it.
It didn't last time. Yes. I remember, I was at Politico for a long time, and I remember we kept sending reporters. We'd send trade reporters to Iowa, to Nebraska, everywhere. They'd be in the soy. They'd meet with the soy growers, and they'd just be like, you're getting killed. I mean, this was before the $50 billion payout, okay? But you're getting killed, all these trade wars. Agriculture's always the most exposed because we're such good we were such good exporters of certain commodities. Brazil's really stepped in and taken over some of that global position, but we kept sending reporters from Politico. I remember this. And they talked to farmers and they'd be like, yeah, I'm getting killed. Can't move my crops. This is bad. I'm losing money. And then they'd be like, okay, but are you mad at the Trump administration? And they'd be like, no, I trust the president. We're, hold strong. We're taking the brunt of it, but I believe in the trade agenda.
Yeah.
And I remember at a certain point just being like, how many more of these reporters are we going to send? This is no longer a surprising story.
Sure.
But it's sort of surprising from the outside because you're like, well, this doesn't logically make sense.
Right.
If some policy is affecting your livelihood in this way, of course you're going to turn. And I think we really only see folks do that at the margin. So I think they're going to get money. They're going to get money from the government to help try to blunt the impact of this, and that will probably help quite a bit.
I think what we're going to see, though, is the farm, something similar that happened to, in the 1980s.
Oh, yeah, no, we're in a bad place. We're in a bad place.
So, farmer suicides, people losing their farms, that's not going to influence.
I mean, I think they will come up with aid. I think they will do federal aid. It won't be enough. Farmers are still going to go out of business. There's still going to be consolidation. I just don't see that dynamic changing fundamentally. And we also have to remember that, farmers they're this group that is very powerful in Washington, but they're actually not a big voting bloc because we're so efficient at farming that it's 1% of the population. So in certain places, yes, but I mean, even in Iowa, I remember back in the day when Ted Cruz won the Iowa caucus, even though he was anti-ethanol, I think that was a moment where I was like, oh, there just aren't enough farmers left in Iowa. They're always counterbalanced by voters and other professions. And so I don't know. I think sometimes we overestimate the power of agriculture as a voting bloc, and we underestimate them as a lobbying power in DC.
Sure.
That's my hot take.
Thank you. This is a room full of food and agriculture companies, but mostly food companies. How are the tariffs impacting them? What do you put your crystal ball? What do you see?
I wish I had a crystal ball. Look, I think everyone is struggling with this right now, what to do, how much to fight back. Do certain sectors, I know particularly commodity groups are struggling with how much to fight the administration because they also don't want to get blowback from it.
Right.
But this is something everyone is struggling with, and I frankly don't have a good answer of where we're going. Food prices are going up, and that is something that really could affect, the midterms, the next presidential election. We know that food prices are a huge, huge issue. So I think that's something to watch, the extent to which that could cause more low information voters or just consumers who maybe aren't paying a ton of attention to go, wait a minute, like, are these policies like making my life better if my groceries are significantly more expensive? I think that could be a real factor, but I don't know, man. I mean, I went to a meeting recently where there was like a trade expert, and they had written a speech, and like 20 minutes before, I don't even remember what the president did, but like he had to completely rewrite like what he was, I mean, because it just changes so much. Like you can't even predict like hour by hour what this administration is going to do. So I'm sorry, I guess, that all of you are trying to plan in this environment, because I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, it's hard to give them advice, right? Yeah.
Good luck.
Farm bill.
Oh, it's
lots.
This is not gonna happen.
Ever?
I have a hard time seeing a farm bill happening. Washington, or Congress in particular, is so dysfunctional. I mean, we are probably not keeping the lights on. Like the government, we're struggling to fund just the government.
Yeah.
So the level of dysfunction is extremely high. Yes, there are some folks who are holding out hope for a skinny farm bill. I'm very skeptical about that happening. I think Republicans really poisoned the well with how they cut SNAP during the BBB, the Big Beautiful Bill, which is what it's called, reconciliation, the process that they used to do that, which basically did a historic cut to SNAP, the biggest in the program's history by far, on a party line vote.
Yeah.
And that really poisoned the well. I mean, SNAP is the vast majority of farm bill spending. And so to handle it in that way, like, I just don't think Democrats are like really excited about the idea of doing all the other kind of smaller policy stuff in a skinny farm bill. And they've said as much. We'll see, though. I think the X factor here is how distressed the farm economy is right now, in terms of not only the trade implications, but really high input costs. I mean, Washington is hearing a lot about how precarious the situation is for farmers. And so, maybe there could be some other form of aid. I think like an aid package would almost be easier than trying to do. But we'll see. I really don't know what's going to happen there. But I do think that message is being sent that like we could have a pretty bad mini farm crisis or similar farm crisis if nothing is done. So.
Yeah. I wonder if there are any issues that you're seeing that have a lot of bipartisan support in food and agriculture that you see sort of taking off over the next 3.5 years.
Bipartisan. Well, I think school meals is a really interesting place to watch. Farm to school has always been bipartisan. There's always been this like kind of magical like, well, this is good for rural economies. This is good for, this is just a good economic thing to do, to have farms sourcing schools. Schools are the largest restaurant chain in the country, and it's not close. Like, it's like many times bigger than any of the larger chains. So there's a real buying power there. What I think is going to be interesting to watch is if the Trump administration does issue dietary guidelines soon, which I know Marion and I are going to talk about, that say eat fewer ultra-processed foods. We're going to have to change the school meals program, because there's a lot of ultra-processed foods in the school meals. So I think that's a place where there's going to have to be some sort of bipartisan work. If it's not expanding farm to school, you're going to have to spend more money if you're going to have meals be less processed. And I don't know where that goes. Congress has been unwilling to spend more money on that program basically for the last decade or 15 years. When was Healthy Hunger Free? 2011, 2010?
Yeah, 2010.
So 15 years, we haven't seen them spend more money in terms of meaningfully attaching that to changes. That was a Michelle Obama move, which, by the way, was very partisan. Republicans hated it, lost their minds, completely lost their minds.
They did.
I remember this very vividly, was covering it. And so now I think we're in a very different place where a lot of Republicans are get processed foods out of school meals. The polling on this is wild. The polling supporting the idea of banning, usually not a word Republicans like, banning ultra-processed foods processed foods from school meals is like a 70-30 issue for both Republicans and Democrats. We don't have polling from 2010 on that.
Right.
But I guarantee you it didn't look like that.
We're in the
There's
upside
no
down.
way. There's no way it looked like that. And if that continues, then I think there's really interesting places where that whole movement could go. I mean, California is doing a lot right now they're trying to get at least some of the ultra processed foods out of their school meals. They've expanded to universal. They're doing a lot more farm to school. So, maybe we're eventually heading there where that, but Congress is so dysfunctional, you guys. I'm telling you, like, even just funding the government is a struggle. So it's hard to feel really like, oh yeah, they're going to tackle this issue, even though it's bipartisan.
Right.
The outlook for that is not good, but certainly the opportunity would be there if there were leadership to do that.
Absolutely. Makes it hard for you to plan an editorial
Oh,
calendar.
there's no calendar anymore. It's like every week we're like, okay.
Scrolling.
Yeah. I used to write the newsletter like the afternoon before, and I've even had to shift that later because I've had to rewrite too many.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the newsletter,
Yes.
I want everyone in this room to hear a little bit more about it and then subscribe. Can you talk about it?
So if you're into food policy, it's just foodfix.co. You can get on the list. Every week, we're talking a lot about MAHA, but every week there's just so much going on. There's so much going on. I mean, this week, the Trump, was it this week? Last week? This week. Yes, this week. What day is it? The Trump administration decided to cancel the food insecurity survey that it was last week. It was late last week.
Yeah.
This is basically the big measure of food insecurity we have for the country. It measures both food insecurity and also very low food insecurity, which is something that I think most people would associate a little more with like hunger, like disrupted eating. And we've been tracking that over years for decades, every year. And the Trump administration has said we're not going to do that survey after this year or anymore.
Right.
So those types of things, you're just like, I did not see this coming. This is this is very abrupt. So every week, there's a lot going on. And you may think this doesn't affect you, but I would argue that it does over the long term to not have data on that. But, it's just, there's a lot going on. So yeah, if you're interested in this, definitely read the newsletter. I also mentioned a podcast I'm doing called Forked with the Food and Environment Reporting Network, which is a good listen. People like listening to it when they go for walks to try to multitask. So it's a good way to catch up on what's going on. And never a dull moment.
Never a dull moment.
I wish you all the best in planning and being strategic and forward thinking, like I know you all have to do in your jobs, because it is an impossible time right now. So
Thank you, Helena. I just want to take this opportunity before you all give your applause. I admire you so much. You are doing the hard work. You are in the trenches. Thank you.
Thank you.
Give her a round of applause, please. You stay right there.
Okay,
you don't move.